I moved here for peace, quiet, a fresh start, something soft to replace the sharp edges left behind after the breakup. I needed silence, not the kind you get in cities between sirens, but real silence, the kind you can feel in your chest. I found it on the edge of Eugene, Oregon. A little rental house nestled at the end of a dead road, boxed in by tall pines that blocked the sun most mornings and muffled the sound of everything except the wind. It was perfect. 2 bedrooms, a porch, no neighbors on either side. Just me and the trees. I unpacked slow, slept late, sat on the porch with my coffee and listened to the wind drift through the branches. And for a little while, it worked. I breathed deeper, laughed again. It felt like I was healing, until I saw him. It happened on a Thursday, the first time. 3:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because I glanced at the microwave clock on my way back from the bathroom. I passed the window and paused. Something outside. Movement. A shape. I stepped closer and saw him. A man, half lit by a motion sensor light across the street, standing perfectly still on the edge of the woods. No umbrella, no phone, no flashlight. Just him, standing there, facing my house like he'd been waiting. I blinked and he was gone. The next night, I stayed up. Not because I was scared, but because I needed to know if I'd imagined it. I curled on the couch in a blanket, lights off, eyes locked on the window. At 3:17 a.m., he stepped out again from between the trees. Same spot, same motionless stare. Closer this time, facing me. I grabbed the remote and flipped on the porch light. In that instant, he disappeared like a puff of smoke. I called the police the next morning. Officer Mercer showed up, clipboard in hand, eyes half-lidded with boredom. I told him everything. The time, the man, the feeling. He smirked and said it was probably just a deer. "Do deer wear boots?" I asked. He shrugged, told me to lock my doors and promised someone would drive by. No one did. That's when things started shifting. One morning I stepped outside and saw my patio furniture had been moved, rearranged into a perfect square under my living room window. Another day, I found muddy boot prints on my back step, leading in from the woods. I checked my bedroom window and found it open, something I hadn't done myself. At night, I started hearing things. Not footsteps or knocks, but something worse. This faint, deliberate tapping against the glass, like someone pressing their fingers to it slowly, patiently. I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Dillinger, if she'd seen anything. She was in her 70s, a quiet woman who always sat on her porch like a statue. When I mentioned the man, she looked at me with these dull, unfocused eyes and said, "Some folks don't stop watching until they're sure you're alone." Then she turned back to her tea like we hadn't spoken at all. That's when I bought cameras. Motion-sensitive, infrared, connected straight to my phone. I installed one on the porch and one out back. For 3 nights, nothing. Then, on the 4th night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the feed and stared into a black screen. Not frozen, not glitched. Just pure, solid black, like something was covering the lens. The next morning I went outside and found duct tape across both cameras, pressed cleanly and evenly. He'd been inches from my door. I called Officer Mercer again. He wandered through the house slower this time, looking around like he was half thinking of something else. "Are you sleeping?" he asked. "Are you doing your job?" I shot back. He sighed and said something about isolation playing tricks. I didn't respond. That night, I wrote a note in red marker and taped it to my front door. "I see you." In the morning, it was gone. But inside, on my windowsill, was another note. Same paper, same red marker, same handwriting. "I see you too." I stopped sleeping completely. I locked myself in the bedroom at night, barricaded the door with a chair, kept a hammer under my pillow. I was hollowed out, running on caffeine and dread. My boss called to ask why I'd missed another deadline and I hung up mid-sentence. I lost weight. My reflection looked wrong. My eyes were ringed with purple. I avoided mirrors because I didn't trust who I'd see. Then came the storm. It started around midnight. Thunder cracked the sky like bone. Rain pounded the windows. And at 3:17 a.m., the power went out. Total darkness. The kind that feels thick, like it's crawling down your throat. A few seconds later, I heard it. The slow, unmistakable creak of the back door opening. Not kicked. Not forced. Just opened. Like he knew the house already. Then footsteps. Wet ones. Slow and deliberate. Crossing the kitchen, coming closer. I slid off the bed, crawled to the closet, and squeezed inside, pulling the door shut until there was just a sliver of space to breathe. The footsteps reached my bedroom, then stopped, and then I heard breathing. Heavy, shallow, too close, too real. Then his voice, low, calm, just outside the closet. You always forget to close your blinds. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button now, because what happened next still makes my skin crawl. I don't remember the scream. I don't remember opening the bedroom window or landing in the flower bed. I just know I ran. Barefoot, bleeding, screaming into the rain until I made it to a porch at the far end of the road and started pounding on the door. Lights flicked on. Police were called. When they searched the house, he was gone. No fingerprints, no damage, no signs of entry. But under my bed, they found something. A leather journal. Old, cracked, the edges curled from use. Inside were pages filled with notes. About me, what I wore. When I turned off the lights. What shows I watched. When I locked my doors. Sketches of my bedroom. Of me sleeping. The first entry was dated 6 months before I moved in. And the early entries weren't about me. They were about someone else. A name I didn't recognize. Maggie. Her routines. Her bed. Her life. The last entry under her name said, "Moved out or missing. I'll wait for the next one." The final page was blank. Just one thing on it. The date. Today's. They never caught him. No prints, no footage. The cameras had been disabled from the inside and the wiring was pulled clean. Like whoever did it had been in no rush at all. No signs of struggle. No trace of a break-in. No indication he'd ever been there at all. And yet somehow he had known everything about me. Every step. Every habit. Every weakness. I moved again, far away. New city. Top floor. Bars on the windows. No trees. No glass walls. I got a dog. Started therapy. Changed my number. Even changed my name. And for a while I started to sleep again. Not deeply, but enough to feel human. Enough to believe I had finally outrun him. Until last week, when my phone buzzed at exactly 3:17 a.m., the same cursed time as always, and the screen lit up with a single alert. Motion detected. Living room window. I opened the app expecting nothing, maybe a glitch or a false trigger, but the feed came through perfectly clear, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice, because there I was, lying in bed, sleeping peacefully. Only I wasn't asleep. I was sitting upright, awake, staring at the screen in real time, watching myself sleep in a room with no camera, and I don't even own a camera facing my bed. I used to think that when someone stole your identity, it meant they drained your bank account or used your name to sign up for credit cards. But the man who stole mine didn't want money. He didn't want access to my life. He wanted to be it. And the terrifying thing is, he nearly succeeded. By the time I figured out what was happening, it was already too late to stop it. And now I'm not sure there's even a version of me left that people believe in. It started small. The kind of subtle wrongness you convince yourself to ignore. My boss asked me during a team call if I was feeling okay. Said she got my message about needing time off, and I had no idea what she meant. I hadn't sent anything, and when I checked my inbox afterward, there was nothing. No draft, no text, no call history. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she misread something or clicked the wrong thread. But the next day, a friend messaged me on Instagram asking why I was suddenly acting distant. When I told her I hadn't messaged her at all, she sent a screenshot. There was my name, my profile picture, even photos she hadn't seen before, and the conversation looked real. But the words weren't mine. It sounded like someone wearing my skin, using my tone without understanding what makes me human. I reported the account and blocked it, but it didn't stop there. Strangers began tagging me in posts, responding to messages I'd never written, thanking me for advice I never gave, or calling me cold for disappearing on them. Some said we'd been speaking for weeks, and when I insisted I wasn't the one they'd talked to, they blocked me, or told me to stop pretending. It got worse quickly. My following started growing for no reason. My inbox filled with confused faces and angry questions, and I was constantly apologizing for things I hadn't done, and no one believed me. Then came the voice. One of my students forwarded a voice note someone had sent her, pretending to be me, and when I heard it, I froze. It was my voice, but the message was wrong. It said things I would never say, suggested we meet privately, promised favors, made subtle threats, all with my cadence, my inflection, even my pauses. Like someone had taken pieces of my words and stitched them together into something monstrous. I checked every folder on my phone, searched the cloud, my backups, my devices, but that recording didn't exist anywhere, except in her inbox. I started locking my phone in a drawer at night, deleted every app, reset passwords, changed my number, switched accounts, but the impersonator always returned, faster, stronger, more accurate. Like each time he slipped through, another layer of me peeled away. He didn't just copy, he evolved. People around me started to notice. They treated me differently, cautious, guarded, like I was unpredictable or dangerous. My boss reassigned projects. My sister replied slower. My closest friend stopped returning my calls. I began leaving sticky notes around my apartment, reminders of what I said, where I'd been, who I'd seen. I recorded daily logs on my voice recorder, and still the world kept drifting further from me, like I was watching a version of myself that existed online more convincingly than I did in real life. Then I found the letter taped to my fridge. The handwriting was mine, the paper from my journal, but I hadn't written it. It said, "I'm sorry for what I said last night. I just wanted to make things right." And it was signed with my name. If you're still listening, now might be a good time to hit subscribe, before you start hearing your own voice say things you never remember saying. I tried to get help. I contacted the police. They filed a report, but without a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. I hired a private investigator. He traced one account to a chain of rerouted servers in multiple countries. The photos weren't scraped from my social media. They were taken from inside my home. Different angles. Moments I didn't remember. Someone had been here, or still was. Then one night, I found a video saved to my gallery. One I hadn't taken. It showed me asleep on the couch, and standing behind the camera, just barely visible in the reflection of the dark screen, was a figure with my posture, my shape, wearing my clothes. Just before the video cut out, she leaned forward and whispered in my voice, "What you thought was outside was never outside at all." From that point on, I stopped trusting anything, not my memories, not my voice, not even my reflection. I'd catch myself moving wrong, too smooth or too slow, and when I looked in the mirror, I sometimes saw her mouth moving just slightly before mine, as if I was copying her, not the other way around. People stopped calling me by name. Some would hesitate when we spoke, like they were waiting to see which version of me they were talking to. I started to think maybe I really wasn't the original. Maybe I was the fake, the echo, and she was the one who had always been here, just waiting for the right moment to replace me. Now the messages have stopped, because there's no one left to convince. The accounts are silent, because she doesn't need them anymore. People respond to her now, not to me. When I speak, I hear the doubt in their voice, like they're comparing me to someone else. I spend my days watching the last video again and again, trying to catch a detail I missed, trying to prove to myself that I'm still real, and not just another draft of a person someone else perfected. Sometimes at night, I see her reflection in the black TV screen, or in the darkened window. She doesn't move, doesn't wave, doesn't speak, just watches with my face and my stillness, like she's waiting for me to mess up again. And maybe this time she won't need to fake anything. Maybe this time she won't need to whisper to be heard, because she's already speaking through me. And I wonder if someday soon, I'll be the one locked outside, forgotten, erased, pacing behind the glass, trying to make someone understand that I used to exist, that I used to matter, that I used to be the real one. And when that day comes, I'll wave to her slowly, like I've done it before, like I've always belonged out here.
They say your home should be your sanctuary, but the moment we signed the papers for 657 Boulevard, something felt off. Though I couldn't explain it then, just a subtle pull at my stomach, like something in the walls exhaled when we crossed the threshold, as if it had been waiting. We'd moved for the quiet, for the old trees lining the street and the promise of peace. James kept saying the kids would thrive here, that Ella needed space to ride her bike and Max needed a backyard, not a balcony. I wanted that too, so I hushed the unease, because new homes are just old bones with fresh paint, and I wanted to believe it would settle in time. The first letter came 3 days after we moved in. No return address, hand-delivered to the mailbox, heavy cream paper with black ink in neat cursive. It read, "Dearest new residents of 657 Boulevard, how did you find your arrival? Have they started sleeping on the second floor yet? I've been watching for the lights to come on again. It's been dark for far too long." James laughed it off, said it was probably some weird neighborhood tradition or joke. But the kids hadn't started sleeping upstairs yet, and no one but us knew that, not even our closest friends. Something about the phrasing, again, sent a chill down my spine I couldn't quite shake. I didn't tell the kids, but I started checking the locks twice before bed and closed the blinds tighter than usual. That night, I noticed one of the hallway photos had been turned slightly. I assumed I bumped it. The second letter came 2 days later, this time referencing Max's toy left on the porch and Ella's pink dinosaur pajamas. It ended with, "I must admit I'm pleased with your choice of curtains. They do well to hide the nursery, but nothing is ever completely hidden." I walked the perimeter of the house that night with James, shining a flashlight at bushes and windows, feeling silly and dramatic, but unable to ignore the pressure behind my eyes. Like someone was standing just out of reach, watching, remembering. I called the police, and they made a note, said they'd patrol more frequently. But without a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. James rolled his eyes, but agreed to install a few cameras, which I checked obsessively, even though they never showed anything useful. Then the letters changed tone, became more familiar, more intimate, using our names, describing the photos in our hallway, commenting on the smell of James's cologne, asking if I still hummed that same lullaby when Max couldn't sleep. I felt like I was being rewritten in someone else's memory, like I wasn't me, unless they said I was. One night, I heard Ella talking softly in her room, and when I asked who she was speaking to, she said, "The man in the wall." But when I pressed her, she clammed up and wouldn't say another word. The last letter was different. It came taped to the inside of our refrigerator door, addressed not to me, but to her. The version of me he'd been writing to all along, the one I didn't remember becoming. It said, He knows the walls. He's been inside them longer than you've been alive. You were never alone. Maybe she's always lived here, and I was just borrowing the space. I searched every inch of that house, the attic, the crawl space, behind every panel and vent. In the nursery closet, I found a hollow behind the drywall. Inside were dozens of old photographs, black and white, some of them children, standing in front of this very house, labeled with names I didn't recognize and dates going back to 1948. One of the pictures showed a girl that looked too much like Ella, standing in the same spot she likes to sit and read, wearing a dress she doesn't own. That night, I woke up to the sound of the baby monitor crackling, even though Max hadn't used it in months. I heard my own voice humming the lullaby, but I wasn't humming. I walked to the nursery and found the door slightly ajar, the air cold, and Ella sitting on the floor with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the closet. When I asked what she was doing, she whispered, "Listening." I turned off the monitor, closed the door, and told myself it was just my imagination. But when I checked my phone later, there was a video saved to my gallery I didn't take. Just a recording of the hallway outside our bedroom, slowly panning toward the nursery, then back again, ending with a whisper. "Welcome home, young blood." Since then, no more letters have arrived, but sometimes I wake up to the faint sound of breathing behind the walls or the creak of someone else's footsteps on the floorboards. I wonder if he ever really left, or if he's just watching now, waiting, learning to speak in my voice. Sometimes, when I pass the hallway mirror, I swear I see someone standing just behind me, not moving, not blinking, just waiting for me to forget who I am so she can become me. And when that moment comes, I don't think anyone will notice the switch. They say your home should be your sanctuary, but I think it's always belonged to her. What's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you when you were completely alone? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this one kept you listening, give it a like, share it with someone who loves the feeling of not being alone, and subscribe for more.